I called in sick on a Tuesday. No fever, no scratchy throat, no mysterious rash. My sinuses were perfectly clear and my immune system was doing great. Thanks for asking. I just, and I cannot stress this enough, did not want to go to work. 8 hours of staring at spreadsheets for a company that manufactured industrial ceiling fans felt like a crime against humanity, and I had finally decided the punishment didn't fit. So I texted my supervisor, not feeling well, low-grade temp, maybe COVID, turned my phone face down, and settled in on the couch with my Switch, a bag of Takis, and Biscuit, my 2-year-old chocolate lab, who had already claimed the entire left cushion and was snoring like a retired construction worker. "Move over, man," I told him. He opened one eye, looked at me, and did not move. "Fair," I said. The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, booted up. I was finally going to beat Phantom Ganon. I'd been putting it off for 3 weeks. Today was the day. I had snacks, I had nowhere to be, and I had a dog who radiated body heat like a miniature furnace. Everything was perfect. And then my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Sienna Calloway. I frowned a little. Sienna and I had been in the same friend group at the University of Denver. Not close, but the kind of friends who texted birthday wishes and occasionally liked each other's Instagram posts without having to fake enthusiasm. She was a genuinely good person. Funny, sharp, remembered everyone's coffee order. We hadn't talked on the phone since maybe junior year. "Hey, Sienna." "Beck." Her voice came out in a rush, like she'd been holding the words in her lungs until they ached. "Beck, you have to listen to me. I need you to actually listen." I sat up straighter. Something in her pitch was wrong. Not sad wrong, not drunk wrong, scared wrong. The kind of scared that bypasses the polite parts of the brain and goes straight to the lizard core. "Okay," I said carefully. "I'm listening." "Zombies." A pause. "Sorry?" "Zombies, Beck. Like The Walking Dead, like 28 Days Later, like every single zombie thing you've ever watched. And I know you've watched all of them because you used to rank them in our group chat at 2 in the morning. She wasn't wrong. I had, in fact, once created a 47-entry ranked list of zombie media that had gotten me temporarily muted from 3 different group chats. "Sienna," I said, keeping my voice level, "are you okay? Did you take something? Did someone—" "I know how it sounds." Her voice cracked. "I know. I'm not on anything. I'm not having a breakdown. Beck, please, do you remember 6 weeks ago when I was in that car accident on I-25? I did remember. It had been bad. A semi had run a red light and clipped her passenger side hard enough to send her car spinning into the guardrail. She'd flatlined for 7 minutes in the ambulance." "Of course," I said. When I was gone. When I was dead, Beck." A shaky exhale. "I was somewhere else. I lived it. All of it. Years of it. A zombie outbreak, real as anything I've ever seen. And I was there until I died. And when I came back, when they shocked me back, I remembered everything." I was quiet for a long moment. Biscuit had stopped snoring and was watching me with those liquid brown eyes, cocking his head like he could hear something strange in her voice too. "Sienna," I said, "switch to video." "What?" "FaceTime me, right now." The call switched. When her face appeared on my screen, I forgot everything I'd been about to say. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, eyes red-rimmed, hair in a bun that had given up on being a bun, dark circles carved under her eyes like bruises. She'd lost weight. She was wearing what looked like the same sweatshirt 3 days running. This was not a person playing a prank. This was a person who had seen something. "Okay," I said very quietly, setting the Switch controller down on the coffee table. "Tell me everything." Her name was Sienna Calloway, and she had been clinically dead for 7 minutes and 18 seconds. In that time, and she knew this made no logical sense, she had already Googled every medical explanation and none of them were sufficient. She had lived through approximately 3 years of the end of the world. Not as a dream, not as a haze, as a life. She remembered the smell of burning rubber and decomposing flesh. She remembered what it felt like to be genuinely bone-deep starving. She remembered the exact sound a zombie made when it caught a scent. It was a soft clicking in the throat, she said, like wet fingers on piano keys. I didn't say anything. I was sitting very still. The outbreak starts in 8 days, she said, from today. And Beck, she paused, and her voice dropped to something smaller. In that life I lived, I didn't make it. I went looking for help, and I found the wrong people, and She stopped, pressed her lips together. I'm not going to do that again. In what I remembered, she continued, you had supplies. You had a place. You had prepared. You were the only person I knew who would have actually prepared. I stared at the ceiling for a moment. Biscuit put his chin on my knee. You watch too much zombie content, Sienna added, and her voice almost broke. And for once in your life, Beck, that is genuinely useful. Here's the thing about me that people who only know me casually don't understand. I am not a zombie fan the way other people are fans. I am a student. I have spent a frankly embarrassing portion of my adult life, my formative adult years, age 18 through 23, watching, reading, analyzing, and cross-referencing zombie media. Not because I thought any of it was real, because I found the logistics interesting. The resource management, the group dynamics, the way different survival strategies played out. It scratched the same itch as Civilization or Dwarf Fortress, except with more intestinal content. I had notebooks, color-coded, with citations. So when Sienna told me that zombies were coming in 8 days, I didn't argue, I didn't comfort her, and I didn't immediately reach for medical resources. I opened the Notes app on my phone and started typing. Okay, I said, tell me everything you remember. About what worked, what didn't, where things went wrong. Everything. Sienna blinked. You believe me? I believe you experienced something real, I said. And I believe you're scared. And I believe that even if I'm wrong, preparing for a catastrophe doesn't hurt anyone. I looked at Biscuit. He thumped his tail. Besides, you've seen my apartment. You know I already have 45 pounds of freeze-dried backpacking food in my closet. Beck. It started as a running gag, I said, and then it became a comfort thing. We all have our quirks. For the first time since she called, Sienna laughed. It was small and wet and exhausted, but it was a laugh. You haven't changed at all. Give me everything you've got, Calloway. We're going to plan the hell out of this. 2. 8 days. I wrote that number on a sticky note and put it on my bathroom mirror where I'd see it every time I brushed my teeth. 8 days to build something that would keep us alive. 8 days to transform from a 23-year-old data analyst with mediocre savings and a dog into someone who could actually survive an apocalypse. No pressure. Let me walk you through what I did, because when I tell people the summary, they always skip the impressive part, which is that I did all of this in 8 days, while maintaining the fiction that I was, in fact, sick with a mild respiratory illness. Day 1, the money problem. First thing I did after Sienna hung up was pull up every financial account I had. Checking, $4,200. Savings, $11,800. 401k, $8,500. Untouchable without a penalty, so I mentally set it aside. Then I opened my credit cards. 2 of them, limits of $5,000 and $7,500. Okay, not enough. Not by a long shot. I needed to think bigger, which meant I needed to be creative, which meant I needed to be slightly immoral in ways that would not matter if the world was ending. I maxed both cards first. Cash advances, balance transfers, anything that put money in my checking account. That hurt, because credit card cash advance fees are predatory. But I did the mental math and filed it under sunk cost of not dying. Then I called my bank and asked for a personal loan. Home improvement project, I said, which was technically not a lie. I was going to do a lot of improving to someone's home. I got $15,000 at a rate that would have horrified my former personal finance professor. Then I did something I am less proud of. I applied for 3 more credit cards. 2 approved me on the spot. Combined limit, $14,000. Running total, roughly $57,000. That would have to do. No, wait, my car. I had a 2019 Civic that I'd been paying off for 2 years. I called the dealership and did a cash-out refinance against the equity, which is something I had not previously known you could do. The finance guy on the phone sounded like he was trying to figure out if I was pulling some kind of scam. I was not. I came away with another $9,000. Grand total, approximately $66,000. I felt nauseated. Then I thought about the sticky note on my mirror, and I stopped feeling nauseated. 8 days. The property problem. I lived in a solid but ordinary apartment in Denver's Capitol Hill neighborhood. Good location, 3rd floor, 1 bedroom, no balcony, communal laundry. Fine for normal life, absolutely useless for a zombie outbreak. I needed somewhere defensible, somewhere high, with independent utilities, limited entry points, and ideally the kind of structural redundancy that comes from spending way too much money on architecture. I spent approximately 4 hours on Zillow, Apartments.com, and various luxury rental sites before I found it. The Meridian. A newly built high-rise on the edge of downtown, 40 stories of glass and steel that had opened 8 months ago and was, according to the leasing website, only 40% occupied. Which meant a lot of empty hallways, a lot of controlled access, a lot of building with not a lot of people in it. The rooftop, a private resident deck with wraparound views, a glass-enclosed garden atrium, and solar panels. Solar panels. My heart did something embarrassing. The penthouse on the 40th floor was listed at $8,500 a month. I called the leasing office and said I'd take it. Month to month, move in by the end of the week. I paid first, last, and security with a credit card transfer and tried not to think about what I was doing. "We'll email you the smart lock codes," the leasing agent said. "Thanks," I said, and I meant it more than she knew. The contractor problem. I needed someone who could fortify an apartment building penthouse to withstand sustained human siege without asking too many questions. And I needed them in less than a week. And I needed to pay them in cash. Fortunately, I knew a guy. His name was Hector Dominguez. I'd met him 3 years ago when I was interning at an insurance company, and he'd come in to do a security audit on the building's physical infrastructure. Door reinforcements, window classifications, that kind of thing. He was meticulous, competent, had a crew of 4 guys, and had given me his card while telling me he also did private residential work. I'd kept the card. I don't know why I'd kept the card. Maybe the notebooks rubbed off on me. I called him. "Mr. Dominguez," I said, "I have a job that's going to sound weird, and I need it done in 3 days, and I'll pay 30% over your usual rate." A pause. "How weird?" "Fortify a penthouse apartment," I said. "Blast-resistant windows, secondary locking systems on all entry points, fingerprint and keypad entry, panic room grade door for the main entrance. I also want the rooftop atrium sealed into a functioning greenhouse with independent water supply, and I need every system to have a backup power source. And I need it done without anyone else in the building knowing." Another pause, longer this time. "Beck," he said finally, "is someone threatening you?" "No, sir," I said, "but I need it done like someone might." He came by that afternoon and walked the space with a tape measure, muttering to himself and making notes. Before he left, he looked at me with the expression of a man who has decided some questions aren't worth asking. "3 days," he said. "I'll need my crew to work nights." "Perfect," I said. "Name your price." He named it. I transferred half immediately. He blinked at his phone. "Okay," he said. "We start tonight." 3. While Hector's crew worked nights, I worked days. I sent Sienna a spreadsheet, a very long spreadsheet, of everything she needed to secure her situation in her city, along with a checklist she could actually execute. She was in Colorado Springs, about an hour south of me, which meant we couldn't share resources, but we could at least share information. "This is the most organized thing I have ever received," she texted me at 11 p.m. "You made a tab for psychological preparedness." "It's important," I texted back. "Mental health is the first casualty in a survival situation. Every zombie story eventually has a breakdown montage. We are skipping that." "No, we're not," she replied. "We're definitely having breakdowns. We're just doing it on a schedule." I genuinely liked Sienna. The supply problem. I needed supplies in quantities that would make a prepper blush. The challenge was acquiring them without triggering questions, without running out of time, and without leaving a trail that would lead anyone back to the meridian. I had an old employee badge from a consulting job I'd done during college. I'd worked data logistics for a nonprofit that supplied corporate event catering. I still had the badge. The nonprofit had since folded. I took it to a FedEx print shop, replaced the photo and the name with a new identity. Reed Halcourt, Logistics and Operations Manager, Callaway Group, and laminated it. Was this identity fraud? Technically, yes. Was the world ending in 6 days? Also, technically, yes. I filed it under Necessary Expedient. With the badge, I walked into Costco and told the membership desk I was doing a bulk procurement for corporate client hospitality. They were delighted. They gave me a temporary business membership and pointed me toward the manager. What followed was one of the most surreal afternoons of my life. I walked through Costco with a manager named Dave and a clipboard, and I just read my list. 50 25-pound bags of flour, 50 25-pound bags of rice, 30 bags of mixed dried grains, oats, barley, quinoa, 50 gallons of canola oil, 50 of olive oil, canned goods, tomatoes, beans, corn, chickpeas, lentils, broth. I went down each aisle asking for bulk, and Dave just kept radioing the stockroom. Spices in bulk jars, salt by the case, sugar, honey, maple syrup. Protein, freeze-dried chicken, beef jerky, canned tuna, vacuum-sealed salmon. 60 cases of instant noodles, 30 cases of protein bars. Nuts by the 50-pound bag. Chocolate, coffee, 40 cases of electrolyte powder. "You're throwing a party?" Dave said. "Series of corporate team-building retreats," I said. "Remote locations, very off-grid." "Nice." Dave tapped his clipboard. "You need utensils?" "Yes, actually." Water was a separate problem. I'd already told Hector about the rooftop cisterns. He was installing 500-gallon tanks with UV filtration up there. But water storage in the unit itself meant portable 55-gallon barrels, which I had delivered to the first-floor commercial space I'd also quietly rented in the Meridian, claiming I was opening a specialty grocery. 40 barrels, filled. For livestock, I drove out to a farm stand east of Denver and bought 12 laying hens, 2 rabbits, and 30 pounds of seed stock. Vegetable seeds, herb seeds, the good stuff. Heirloom varieties packed for long-term storage. The rooftop atrium, once Hector was done with it, would function as a full-season greenhouse. My dad, I knew, would understand how to run it. He'd grown up on a farm in rural Kansas and had never quite left it behind, even after decades in suburban Denver. My parents. I needed my parents. 4. My dad is a man who spent 20 years in the Army National Guard, ran a hardware store after he retired, and has never, in my living memory, expressed surprise at anything. He approaches the world the way a very good surgeon approaches an unusual case, with calm interest and a methodical procedure. My mom is the kind of person who cries at heartwarming commercials and keeps a handwritten gratitude journal and has, in the 43 years she has inhabited this earth, never once been the source of chaos in any situation she was part of. They are, in short, the two people you most want to have in a survival situation. I called them on day 6. "Hey, Dad," I said. "I need you and Mom to come to a new apartment I'm setting up. I know it's sudden. I need you to bring anything irreplaceable, documents, photos, whatever matters, and your shotgun." A pause of about 3 seconds. "Are you in trouble?" my dad said. "No," I said, "but I want you close. Something's coming, and I need my people." I heard him exhale through his nose. In the background, my mom said something I couldn't make out. Then, "We'll pack tonight." I love my father. I didn't tell them everything. Not yet. My parents are wonderful, practical, grounded human beings, and there was approximately 0% chance that they would respond to, "There's going to be a zombie outbreak in 2 days. I've spent my life savings on a fortified penthouse," with anything other than a concerned phone call to a psychiatrist. So, instead, on day 7, when they arrived at the Meridian and stood in the 40-story penthouse with its blast-resistant windows and rooftop greenhouse and 45 days of food stacked in organized categories by caloric density and expiration date, I told them the cover story I'd prepared. "A client," I said, "tech billionaire, very private. He's commissioning a sort of emergency preparedness installation. He asked me to manage the setup, paid me up front. He needs someone to run the greenhouse and manage the domestic operations. I figured you guys could use the break from Denver." My mom looked at the chickens in the rooftop atrium. "He has chickens." "He has chickens." She turned to my dad. "I like chickens," she said. My dad looked at me for a long time. That quiet army guy look that means he's doing calculations. "What's really happening, son?" "Dad," I said, "can you trust me for 48 hours? After that, I'll tell you everything." He held my gaze, then he nodded. 48 hours. I exhaled. "Thank you." "Also," he said, "your financial advisor called me because you apparently transferred everything on your cards. I told him you were handling it." "Yeah. Are you handling it?" "Dad," I said, "I have 45 days of food, a greenhouse, a water supply, and blast-resistant windows. I promise you, I'm handling it." He almost smiled, almost. Attaboy. That night. Day 7, late, the night before it was supposed to start. I stood at the 40th floor window with Biscuit sitting at my feet and looked out at Denver. The city was lit up in the amber glow of a clear October evening, headlights streaming through downtown like a slow electrical pulse. Restaurants and bars doing brisk business, a couple arguing on the sidewalk below with the animated energy of people who think tomorrow is going to be an ordinary tomorrow. I'd sent the supplies list to Sienna. She'd confirmed everything was in order. She'd also confirmed, in a follow-up call, that some things had already shifted from what she remembered. Timing felt off. Sequences were wrong. "The butterfly effect," I'd told her. "You came back. You changed things. Which means the things you changed other things." "So it might be different," she said. "It might be earlier," I said. "Or it might be later. Either way, we're ready." I'd received a message earlier that day from the building's management Discord. Apparently, the Meridian had a resident server. I'd joined and said nothing, just lurked. Based on the usernames and occasional photos, I'd started to piece together my neighbors. There were 6 occupied units besides mine. Floor 20, someone named MVOS2022. From a profile photo, a guy about my age seemed gregarious. Floor 17, Unit A. A handle I'd cross-referenced to a fitness influencer named Harlan Cruz, a big guy, former military, turned personal trainer. Floor 17, Unit B. An account that posted mostly gardening photos turned out to be an older couple, Walter and Phyllis Monroe. Floor 12, a family with a young daughter, a mom named Daria Okafor, her husband Marcus, and their kid Zoe. And Floor 5, an account named Caspian_R, with no profile photo, a locked account, and exactly 0 posts or Discord activity since joining. The mystery tenant. Of course there was a mystery tenant. I made mental notes, added them to my spreadsheet, and stared at the city until well past midnight. Biscuit put his head in my lap. 8 days, I told him, because I had to tell someone who wouldn't panic. We made it. He licked my hand. "Yeah," I said. "Me too." 5. Day 8 started with a text from Sienna. Not a message, a video file. 23 seconds, shaky cam, filmed through a car window. I watched it. In that 23 seconds, I saw a woman in a parking lot bite a man on the neck. I saw the man's knees buckle and hit the ground. I saw two other people try to grab the biting woman and fail, both of them shaking their heads in disbelief because human beings are not built to process what they were seeing. And then, at the 20-second mark, I saw the fallen man, the bitten man, get back up. Wrong. Wrong way that his shoulder bent. Wrong angle of his head. Wrong everything. He lunged at a kid near a shopping cart. Someone's off-screen screaming cut the video short. Sienna called immediately after. "It's happening," she said. Her voice was flat with the eerie calm of someone who already cried and has nothing left. "That's not from around here. That's a parking lot in Aurora. Beck, it's real." "I know," I said. I was already walking to the window, peeling back the blackout curtain a quarter inch. 40 stories below, Denver looked the same as always. But Sienna had sent a video from Aurora, which was 20 minutes east. "Are you secure?" "Yes. I haven't gone outside in 2 days." "Good. Stay that way. Don't open the door for anyone." I watched a bus pull through the intersection below. Ordinary. Remember what I told you. In a survival situation, the thing that kills most people isn't the initial threat. It's the people. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I know. I lived it." "Right." I pulled back from the window. "Call me morning and night. If you miss a call, I assume the worst and adjust my plans accordingly. If I miss a call, same rule applies." "Okay. And Sienna?" I stopped, not sure how to say what I meant. "Thank you for calling me. You didn't have to." The pause she took told me she'd thought about not calling, about just handling it alone. "I owed you one," she said finally. "From that life I lived. Trust me on that." I didn't push it. Some debts are too strange to explain. My parents were at the breakfast table when I hung up. Mom had found the electric griddle I'd stocked in the kitchen supplies and was making pancakes, which felt surreal. Dad was reading something on his phone, and from his expression, I could tell he'd seen the video. It had been going around social media since 6 a.m., reposted and screenshotted with the panicked energy of a nation collectively updating its threat model. "Okay," he said, not looking up. "Tell me what's actually happening." I sat down. I explained everything. Sienna, the NDE, the 8 days, the preparations. All of it, including the credit card debt and the fake business card at Costco. My mom made a small sound when I got to the part about the blast-resistant windows. My dad didn't say anything until I finished. "You were 8 years old," he said, "when you watched Night of the Living Dead through the gap in the door, while I was watching it in the living room." "Dad, I thought you'd have nightmares. Instead, you came in and sat down next to me and asked me why the characters kept splitting up, because that was clearly a tactical error." "It is a tactical error." "You were 8. He leaned back in his chair. "All right. What do we need to do today?" Mom set down her spatula. "How long are we going to be here?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "At minimum, weeks, possibly months, possibly longer." She thought about this. Then she said, "I'm going to need more yarn. I didn't bring enough yarn." "We have supplies for approximately 45 days of full meals," I said. "Greenhouse is operational. Water's good. What do you need the yarn for?" "Knitting," she said. "It's meditative. I will go insane without it." I opened my phone and added yarn to the mental inventory. "I'll figure it out." The building Discord pinged at 9:17 a.m. "Hey everyone, has anyone seen what's happening out there? My cousin sent me videos from East Denver. This is actually bad, right?" That was MVOS 2022. 3 minutes later, Harlan Cruz's account, HCruzFit, replied, "Saw it, staying in, advising everyone to do the same." I watched the thread without responding. The Monroes pinged in. "We've seen the news. We're inside. Walter's just made tea. Stay safe, everyone." The warm grandparent energy of that message made something in my chest do a small, strange thing. Daria Okafor. "Marcus and I are in with Zoe. Doors locked. Does anyone know if the building concierge is still manning the desk?" No one answered that, because apparently the concierge desk was staffed by a person with functional self-preservation instincts who had left as soon as the Twitter videos started multiplying. Caspian_R remained completely silent. The mystery tenant was not a Discord person, apparently. I almost stayed silent, too. Then I thought, information is a resource. Community is a resource. And being the invisible person on the 40th floor wasn't doing me any practical good. I typed, "I'm in the penthouse on 40, running some scans of exterior cameras from up here. Building looks clear so far. Going to keep monitoring." M. Voss, "Wait, you have exterior cameras? You're the one who was doing the renovation?" Me, "Not exactly a renovation, more of a preparedness installation." M. Voss, "Dude, I need to know more about this." A moment later, M. Voss 2022 sent a friend request and pinged me separately. "Can we talk?" he wrote in DMs. I switched to voice chat. Emmett Voss turned out to be 26, a product manager at a tech company, originally from Cleveland, with the kind of easy social energy that made him seem like he should be at a party rather than a zombie outbreak. He laughed a lot. It wasn't nervous laughter. It was the laughter of someone whose coping mechanism is finding everything slightly absurd. In this case, I found that genuinely reassuring. "How much food do you have?" I asked. He paused. "Like, a week? Maybe 10 days if I go light on the protein shakes." "Okay, I have significantly more than that." "Are you serious right now?" I stocked a kind of informal common supply on the first floor, commercial unit. It's got food, some medical stuff, a few tools. If things stabilize and you can make a quick run, there's stock available. I paused. It's not charity. It's communal interest. If everyone in this building eats, everyone in this building is less desperate. Less desperate people are safer neighbors. That is... Emmett was quiet for a moment. "Dude, that is genuinely the smartest thing I've heard in a week. It's also just true." "Can I..." he hesitated. "Can I ping the others? Like, everyone in the building? I feel like we should all be talking." I thought about Caspian Roads, floor 5, silent as a locked account. "Sure," I said. "But maybe add me to whatever group you make so I can monitor the cameras while you're all in there." "Done." A pause. "What's your name?" "Beck," I said. "Beck Holloway." "Emmett Voss. Massive fan of the whole being prepared thing. Didn't vote for you, but I'm glad you exist." I had no idea what that meant, but I appreciated the energy. 6. The neighbors. Before I describe what happened next, let me properly introduce the people who were about to become the most important humans in my life. Emmett Voss, floor 20. Emmett was 26, originally from Cleveland, a product manager at a SaaS company whose entire operating culture was apparently the reason he had 3 separate project management apps on his phone at all times. He was the kind of person who made friends in airport lines and remembered baristas' names and had, based on what I'd pieced together from Discord activity, approximately 400 acquaintances and 3 or 4 people he'd actually trust with anything important. He was the social hub of the building, not because he was elected to it, but because he couldn't help it. He needed people the way some organisms need light. And in the context of a zombie outbreak in a mostly empty high-rise, this made him an extremely valuable asset. He also had a sense of humor that was, under normal circumstances, probably charming and occasionally annoying, and under apocalypse circumstances, was genuinely life-sustaining. He would crack a joke at the exact moment everyone needed the permission to laugh, like he had a sixth sense for when the weight of things was about to become too much to carry. The night before the outbreak, he posted in the building Discord, "Survival tip, if you stockpiled wine instead of canned goods, I need you to report to floor 20 immediately for an emergency reallocation." Nobody had laughed yet because nobody knew how bad things were going to get. 24 hours later, the same message would have been one of the funniest things I'd ever read. Harlan Cruz, floor 17. Harlan had done 2 tours in Afghanistan with the 10th Mountain Division before coming home, going back to school, getting a personal training certification, and building a career around the fact that he understood human bodies with a specificity that most people reserve for things they love. He trained clients for half the day and spent the other half either in his apartment gym or running routes he'd mapped through the city. He was 31, built like something architectural, and communicated in short declarative sentences that contained exactly the information you needed and nothing else. Conversations with Harlan were efficient in a way that I found genuinely restful. He didn't use filler words. He didn't say actually or honestly or so basically. He just said the thing. From Floor 17's vantage point, Harlan had observed the immediate surrounding streets and had a threat assessment ready within the first 12 hours that he'd shared with the group in 3 bullet points. 3 bullet points, 1 paragraph. Exactly right. He had a pull-up bar on his doorframe and apparently did pull-ups when he was anxious, which meant in the first 2 weeks of the outbreak, Harlan Cruz did more pull-ups than most humans do in a year. Walter and Phyllis Monroe, Floor 17, Unit B. Walter Monroe was 68, Vietnam veteran, former civil engineer who'd spent 40 years designing water treatment systems in the Mountain West. He was a small man with an enormous presence, the kind of quiet authority that comes from having done serious work for a very long time and having no interest in convincing anyone of it. Phyllis Monroe was 66, recently retired biology professor from the University of Denver, specialization in epidemiology and pathogen dynamics. She had shoulder-length silver hair, reading glasses on a chain, in the brisk, precise manner of a scientist who had spent 4 decades making sure her students understood that feelings are valid and evidence is better. She was, over the course of the months we shared this building, the person who best understood what we were actually dealing with, and she explained it clearly without ever being condescending, which is a skill I have enormous respect for. They had been married for 41 years and still held hands when they walked, which sounds like a small thing, but is, I have learned, not small at all. Daria Okafor, Floor 12. Daria was 34, had a master's in kinesiology, had run 2 marathons and 1 ultramarathon, could do things with a resistance band that made the concept of upper body strength feel newly defined, and had married Marcus, a software engineer with no discernible physical fitness routine, because apparently their personalities fit together with the satisfying click of compatible puzzle pieces, and the rest didn't matter. Their daughter Zoe was 7. Zoe had her mother's confidence and her father's instinct for finding the funny angle on any situation, which meant she was already, at age 7, a formidable person. She had announced herself in the building Discord on day 3 via her mother's account with, "Hi, I am Zoe. I am 7. I have a stuffed unicorn named Professor Sprinkles, and I am not scared of zombies." She was absolutely scared of zombies, but she was more scared of seeming scared, and there is something genuinely magnificent about a child who refuses to surrender to fear on principle. Marcus Okafor was, on the surface, the person least equipped for an apocalypse. He had no combat training, no medical knowledge, no wilderness skills. What he had was a very high problem-solving intelligence applied systematically to every practical challenge he encountered, a constitution that did not seem to include the capacity for panic, and the ability to keep a straight face and a level voice in situations that made other people lose both. He also fixed my kitchen faucet on day 32. Caspian Rhodes, Floor 5, the mystery tenant. I'm going to come back to him. The building Discord group, which Emmett named the Meridian Survivors Club on day 9, and nobody had the heart to rename it, started as a functional communications channel and became, over several weeks, something more like the nervous system of a small community. It was where we shared intel, coordinated supply runs, raised concerns, and occasionally just talked. On day 9, after I'd shared the first floor supply intel and established my monitoring role, Emmett introduced the Discord server format with the same energy he'd probably used to run team kickoffs. Here's the structure, here are the norms, here's where we put supply information versus here's where we put general discussion. Here's the channel for Zoe's official zombie news reports. He made a channel called Zoe's Bureau. Zoe used it religiously. Her reports were filed twice daily and took on a formal structure over time. Day 11. The zombie situation outside is very bad, but they are being slow today because it's cloudy. I counted 4 from the window. One had its arm falling off, which was gross. My dad said I didn't need to count them, but I think information is important. Mom made pasta for dinner. The pasta was good. That is all the news. Zoe, Chief Correspondent. Harlan put a react on that report every single time it posted. He never said anything about it. He just put a small thumbs up emoji on each one. Day 9. The world outside had started to clarify. By clarify, I mean what had been an ambiguous viral video was now an unambiguous fact. The kind of fact that causes traffic jams on every highway leaving every city simultaneously because everyone has collectively decided that somewhere else is safer. It's not. It never is. But human beings really want to believe in a safe somewhere else, so the highway went anyway. From 40 stories up, with a good pair of binoculars, I could see the streets below. The immediate neighborhood was eerily quiet. The Meridian was in a pricier pocket of Denver, where most people had already fled or were locked tight in units that had been expensive enough to have decent doors. But 3 blocks south, I could see a slow-motion car crash in progress. 2 vehicles locked bumper to bumper, a man gesturing furiously at the other driver, and, moving through the background with the wrong kind of gait, 3 figures who were not interested in the argument. The figures were the wrong color. Gray-white skin, jerky motion. One had its head at an angle that a human head should not maintain. I had watched enough zombie content to know what I was looking at. And even knowing, even having prepared for this, my stomach still did something complicated. "Hey," my dad said, appearing at my elbow. "Hey." He looked through the binoculars for a long moment, set them down, picked up his coffee. "In the Army," he said, "the first thing they teach you after basic is situational awareness. Not tactics, not weapons. Situational awareness. You can't make good decisions without accurate information." Yep, you've got good cameras. Multiple angles, interior and exterior. I've also got the lobby cameras and the stairwell cameras. I paused. Also floors 21 and 22, which I rigged separately when Hector wasn't paying attention. My dad gave me a look. "You bugged your own neighbors?" "Monitored for safety purposes." "Your mother would be appalled." "Yeah, well, Mom's currently teaching a chicken to respond to its name, so." Dad almost smiled again. The almost smile was doing more work than any reassurance could have. The building Discord, which Emmett had rechristened the Meridian Survivors Club with an emoji I chose not to acknowledge, was active and anxious. Emmett was running it like a small-time mayor, pinging everyone with updates, keeping morale from collapsing. Harlan was laconic but helpful. Short tactical assessments, recommendations for door reinforcement, check-ins on the group. The Monroes were calm and warm and occasionally shared poems, which was exactly the right energy. Daria had a daughter named Zoe, who was apparently 7 and had now declared herself the official zombie news correspondent, submitting reports in a small child's voice that were relayed through Daria's messages with corrections in parentheses. "There's a zombie outside. It's drooling." Editor's note. It was a pigeon with a dirty beak. And Caspian Rhodes remained offline. I had seen him once, maybe. I'd been in the lobby checking on the first-floor supply unit when I heard the elevator and stepped back into the shadow of an alcove out of reflex, don't ask me why, instinct, and watched the door slide open to reveal a man who was not what I expected. I built a profile in my head of what Floor 5's mystery tenant would look like. Disheveled, reclusive, maybe some kind of anxious genius type. The man who stepped out of the elevator was composed in a way that felt almost deliberate. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Low-key clothes, the kind that cost a lot but tell you nothing. He moved economically, like someone who had spent a long time learning not to make unnecessary motions. He looked up before he stepped out of the elevator. He scanned the lobby. He clocked the alcove I was in. I saw his gaze pause there, and then he looked away without reacting. Then he was gone. I stood in the alcove for another 30 seconds. I'd kept my profile up in the Discord, but hadn't commented on his floor. He hadn't commented on anything. He was an unknown variable, and I didn't trust unknown variables. But he seemed to know the lobby was occupied, and he hadn't tried to engage. Points for that. Day 10, first supply run. The group had decided, through a long, slightly chaotic Discord debate that Emmett organized with the efficiency of a man who has run too many sprint planning meetings, that someone needed to go to the first floor unit and retrieve supplies while it was still relatively safe. Zombies had been seen in the area, but not yet inside the building. The perimeter doors were still secure. Harlan volunteered immediately. "I'm going. Anyone else?" Emmett. "I'll come." Daria. "Me too." Marcus stays with Zoe. This was how I found myself, from 40 floors up, running an improvised communications operation. 4 feeds open on my monitor, earbuds in, the group in a voice channel where I could hear everything and direct from the camera view. "Stairwell's clear," I told them. "No sound." "First floor lobby. One anomaly near the east entrance. It's pacing." "Wait." It moved away. "Okay. Coast is clear." Harlan's voice came back flat and focused. "Copy that." They were good. Harlan moved like someone who'd done this. Not zombie runs specifically, but controlled entry into uncertain situations. He scanned angles and moved between them like a rhythm. Emmett was chattier and a little jittery, but he listened and responded fast. And then there was Caspian. He appeared in my camera feed without warning, coming out of the stairwell at floor 1. So he'd taken the stairs all the way down from floor 5. He had a jacket on and nothing else that looked like equipment. He looked at the 3 people in front of him and said, quietly but clearly through Emmett's earpiece, "I'll join." Emmett, "Wait, are you the floor 5 guy? Dude, where have you been?" Caspian, "Inside." Emmett, "Right? Okay, cool. That's..." "Sure." I watched Caspian from the camera. He didn't introduce himself beyond that. He positioned himself near the rear of the group, covering their 6 without being asked, which told me things about muscle memory that most people don't have. The supply run went fine until it didn't. I was tracking 4 feeds and calling angles when I caught it. A shift in one of the exterior camera shots, a movement in the blind spot behind a maintenance cart near the lobby's south service entrance. The entrance was technically secure, but the service door had a gap, something I'd noted and flagged in my prep notes, and then apparently had not fully communicated to anyone. "Caspian," I said, because he'd given Emmett his name. "Behind the maintenance cart. 12 o'clock from where you're standing, in the service alcove. There's someone in there." There was a pause of maybe 3 seconds. "You have cameras on us," he said, not accusatory, factual. "Yes," I said, "and right now the more relevant thing is..." "I see it," he said. What happened next I watched from above, quick, decisive, economical. Whoever had been hiding in the alcove, it was a person, not a zombie, which was in some ways worse, had a blade. They came out low and fast. Caspian caught the arm, redirected, and the threat was neutralized in a way that I'm not going to describe in detail, because some things don't need to be described in detail. Emmett made a sound that was not a word. Harlan said, "Okay then." Daria said nothing, but her breathing on the comms went very fast for about 30 seconds. After they'd cleared the area and were heading back up with supplies, Caspian said into the comms, and this one I will quote exactly, because I thought about it many times since. "The door that was forced open in the service alcove isn't difficult to fix. Someone should do that." "I'll add it to the list," I said. "Smart," he said. And then, laughter. Very quiet, very brief, almost like he'd surprised himself. Harlan, "Beck, are you sure you don't actually live in this building?" Me, "I live in this building." Harlan, "Right. Then what's your deal exactly?" Me, "I'll explain later. Let's get everyone upstairs first." 7. What we found. On day 9, after the first supply run, after Caspian's interaction with the person hiding in the service alcove, there was a conversation about what to do with the first floor unit. In the middle of this discussion, Harlan said something that changed the plan. "Has anyone been to floor 18? Silence. "Why?" Emmett said carefully. "I was checking the fire cabinet on 17. I could hear something from above. Through the stairwell door. Faint, but—" He paused. "Not right." I pulled up the stairwell camera for floor 18. Both units showed no activity. Both doors still had the original protective wrap from the developer, never occupied. But there was a dark patch on the carpet near Unit 18B that hadn't been in my earlier footage. "Give me 30 minutes, I said, and ran back the stairwell recordings. What I found. At 3 a.m. on day 8, the day everything started, 2 figures moving fast and quiet up the stairwell, one carrying a bag. They had a construction-level override for the unit access panel. Someone who knew the building's layout had given them a way in. They'd gone into 18B, and neither of them had come out in over 40 hours. "I think there might be a problem in 18B, I told the group. Emmett, what kind of problem? Me. The kind where 2 people went in on day 1, and neither has come out. Pause. Everyone doing the same math. Harlan. I'll go check. He went with Caspian, who appeared in the stairwell camera with his signature quiet inevitability, and Emmett, who decided being present was a skill. Floor 18 smelled, by Emmett's audible reaction even through the earpiece, like something I did not want described in more detail. Harlan said, flat and practical, "Someone died in there." Caspian said, "Or something." Emmett said, hopefully, "Very old sandwich?" Nobody answered him. The door was locked from inside. Caspian did something to the access panel I didn't ask about and wouldn't have been able to replicate. The door opened. What they found. 2 weeks of emptied food packaging, sleeping bags, evidence of 2 people who had lived there. Evidence of what happened when one of them got sick and the other, not understanding what sick now meant, stayed. Caspian handled it. I watched from the camera and made myself watch everything, and then filed it in the category labeled processed and set aside, because that was the only way to keep going. "Hey," I said into comms afterward. "You okay?" Emmett's breathing was uneven. "Yeah. Are you watching us?" "Yes," I said. "Good," he said. "It's easier when someone's watching." I understood that better than I expected. Something about being witnessed, even remotely, even through cameras, changes the texture of hard things. You're not alone in them. "You all did fine," I said. "Close the door. Come upstairs." In the stairwell going up, Harlan said quietly, "Hey, Beck." "Yeah?" "Thanks for watching." "Always," I said. 8. The property management problem. On day 11, the property management company sent a representative. This sounds normal and procedural and like the kind of thing that might even be helpful. It was not. I'd been watching the building's exterior cameras when I noticed a vehicle, branded with the property management company's logo, pull up to the main entrance. 3 people got out. 1 was wearing a property management vest. 2 were not. From 40 floors up, I couldn't make out faces clearly, but I watched them use what appeared to be a master key card to enter the main lobby. I switched to the lobby camera. The management rep approached the front desk intercom and announced himself on the building's PA. "Attention Meridian residents. This is Collins Property Management conducting a wellness check and resource distribution. All residents please respond via intercom or proceed to the lobby to receive your supply package." Then I watched him scan the lobby cameras with a practiced eye. He knew they were there. I killed my camera feeds from the lobby. I was watching from the exterior angle and from a discrete unit on the stairwell landing. "Everyone stay inside," I typed quickly to the group Discord. "Don't respond to the intercom. Don't open your doors. Trust me on this." Emmett, WTFY. I didn't answer that yet. I was watching. The 3 people from the management car were in the lobby for about 20 minutes. They went to the intercom bank and worked through units systematically, getting no response from most, which meant most of my neighbors were smart. One unit on floor 8 responded, buzzing them in. I watched the camera feeds in sequence as they moved through that floor. What I saw in the process of that 20 minutes confirmed everything that was wrong about the situation. They were not there for wellness checks. The two who weren't wearing the vest had equipment that wasn't there to distribute supplies, and the supply packages they brought were not food. I won't detail what happened on floor 8. Some things you watch happen, and then you put them away because dwelling on them will break you, and you need to stay functional. I put it away. The management rep came back to the lobby and spoke quietly with his two associates. From the exterior camera, I could see his face now, hard and calculating. Then he looked directly up at the exterior camera, at me, and said something I couldn't hear. "Hey," Harlan said in voice chat, because I'd pinged everyone to the comms. "Beck, what just happened?" "The building management company is not our friend," I said. "They may come back. I need everyone to be sure their unit doors are triple secured. If they come to your floor, do not respond." "What did they do to 8?" Emmett asked. Silence. "Beck." "I'm handling it," I said. "Everyone check your doors, right now, please." Harlan's response was to go very quiet in a way that ex-military people go quiet when they're shifting gears. "Tell me what we're dealing with," he said. "People who decided the apocalypse is an opportunity," I said. "They know this building has wealthy tenants who prepped. They're here to take what those tenants prepped. They are not interested in anyone's well-being." Another silence. Then Emmett. "What do? We stay locked in and we wait," I said. "They'll come back. When they do, we'll be ready." I spent the next few hours working out a plan. Then I watched the building's Discord get quiet in a way that told me people were scared. Not the jittery scared of a new situation, but the bone-deep scared of understanding that the threat was inside the building's ecosystem, not just outside it. I looked at the camera feed from Stairwell 5, watched the landing for a while. Then I pulled up Caspian's contact and called. He picked up on the second ring. "You saw it," he said. "I saw it," I said. "I need someone to help me think through a response plan." A pause. "What kind of plan?" "The kind," I said carefully, "where we make this building significantly less appealing to come back to. And you're calling me." "You seem," I said, "like someone who has thought about things like this before." The pause this time was longer. Long enough that I thought maybe I'd miscalculated. Then, "I'm on my way up." 8. Let me tell you about Caspian Rhodes. He sat in my living room with a cup of my coffee and looked at my camera array and did not seem surprised by any of it. That's the first thing I noticed. Most people react to surveillance with something: curiosity, discomfort, a reflexive lean toward privacy. Caspian just looked at the feeds, nodded slightly, and started asking questions. Practical questions. How many camera angles did I have on the lobby? Were the stairwells monitored from both directions? What was the weight-bearing capacity of the service entrance barrier I'd installed? My dad, who had elected to sit in on this meeting with the expression of a man whose judgment I had specifically asked for, was watching Caspian the way he used to watch the chess prodigies at the community center when I was a kid, with a quiet, private assessment. "Former military?" my dad asked at one point. Caspian didn't answer directly. He said, something like that. "Enough," I said. "Here's where we are. The management crew will almost certainly come back. They've established a pattern: entry, scan, locate resources, extract. They're opportunistic, but organized. They'll be back within 48 hours. "They know about this floor," Caspian said. I looked at him. "How?" "The woman they had with them," he said. "She spent a long time looking at the upper floors. She had a phone out. She was sending photos." He paused. "You were on the stairwell camera, but I wasn't." I processed this. "You came down via the stairs specifically so you wouldn't be on the lobby camera." I didn't know who was watching the lobby cameras. We looked at each other for a moment, then I said, "Smart," and he said, "You too," and my dad's version of an almost smile became almost an actual smile. The plan we arrived at was not elegant, but it was effective. I'm not going to document every detail because, frankly, some of it edged into territory that I'd rather attribute to situational exigency rather than premeditation. The broad strokes. Harlan had vehicle access to the basement parking garage. There was fuel down there. The first-floor unit was no longer worth defending now that the supplies had been moved upstairs. And Caspian turned out to have an understanding of controlled burn dynamics that he explained with the flat affect of someone reciting a shopping list. "You've done this before," my dad said. "Something like it," Caspian said. "Were you on our side?" "Always," Caspian said. Then, after a beat, "Generally." My dad laughed. Actually, laughed. It was the first time I'd heard him do that in 11 days. What happened over the next 48 hours, I'll summarize. The property management crew came back. They found the first-floor commercial unit compromised, the exterior access sealed in a way that made re-entry complicated and loud, and a building that gave them nothing to work with. Harlan, Emmett, and Caspian handled it from the stairwell. My cameras tracked every angle. I directed from above. No one in the group got hurt. The threat was removed. The building was ours. That evening, I sat on the floor of my apartment with Biscuit's head in my lap and stared at the camera feeds for a long time. The city below looked different at night now. Fewer lights, because some of the grid was starting to flicker. And the street-level motion was wrong in ways that registered subconsciously before you could name them. My phone buzzed. Sienna. "Still here," she said. "How are you?" "Alive," I said. "You?" "Same." A pause. "Beck." In that life I lived, I always wondered what I would have been like if I'd been prepared. If I'd known. A longer pause. "You're doing it. Right now, you're actually doing it." "We're doing it," I said. "Right." Her voice went quiet. "I called because I've been thinking about what you said, about the butterfly effect. Things that changed because I came back. And I keep thinking, I think there are other people like me. People who had experiences like mine and came back with knowledge. And not all of them are going to use it the way you did," I said. "Yeah." I thought about the woman in the lobby footage, the one who'd spent a long time photographing the upper floors, the one who'd seemed specifically interested in floor 40. "I'm aware," I said. "I'm watching for it." "Beck?" "Yeah." "Be careful. Not just of the zombies." "Sienna," I said. I have been saying that sentence since I was a teenager. It's not the zombies you have to worry about. It's basically my thesis statement. She laughed. Even through everything, she laughed. "God, you're such a nerd." "Surviving nerd," I said. Important distinction. 9. Week 2 and 3 hit like a wall. The heat wave started on day 15. Denver in October should be cool, edging toward cold. Instead, within 48 hours of the outbreak, the temperature started climbing. By day 17, it was 94 degrees at 10 in the morning, which was not right, which was not explicable, but which was nevertheless happening. I'd prepped for this too, barely, but enough. I had industrial fans, portable evaporative coolers, a full-chest freezer of ice blocks that I rationed carefully, and the rooftop greenhouse, which we ran with ventilated shade cloth once the temperature started affecting plant viability. "Okay," Emmett said in group chat. "So the zombie thing and also now climate freakout?" Harlan. Extreme weather events are documented in mass casualty scenarios. Ecosystem disruption. "Okay, but I don't know. I have a theory, but it involves accepting some things that are hard to explain." "Try me." Later. Focus on staying cool. Everyone drink water. Electrolytes if you have them. Daria's account. Zoe says the zombies look uncomfortable. I looked at the feed. The activity on the street below had slowed dramatically in the heat. The things out there moved sluggishly, retreating toward shadows and awnings. Sienna had warned me about this, that the things had sensitivity to temperature that their brains, damaged as they were, still registered. Heat made them slow. It also made them hungry, and hunger made them eventually push through discomfort. We did a second supply run during the hottest part of the day, because that was when the street was most sluggish. Caspian led, with Harlan flanking and Emmett on door. I ran comms. We collected the remaining fans and portable coolers from the first-floor unit, plus a cache of medical supplies I'd prepped separately. On the way back, there was a moment in the lobby where Emmett suddenly said into the comms, "Beck, something moved." And I switched cameras and saw it. Not a zombie, but a person. Hiding in the alcove near the building's side exit, watching the group. I looked at what she was carrying. She had a bag of food, specific things, electrolytes, caloric-dense items, the exact kind of provisions that someone would bring if they knew what kind of heat we were in and what bodies needed to survive it. And she was looking at the building, at the upper floors, with the focused intent of someone who knows exactly what they're looking at. "Caspian," I said. "Woman in the side alcove. She knows something. Don't engage. Get everyone upstairs." I heard him process this. "She targeted this building," he said. "Yes," I said, "and she knew what to bring." Which means either she had access to our Discord, which none of us gave her, or she has other information. "Other information," he repeated quietly. "Move," I said. "Get everyone inside." They moved. I watched the woman in the alcove watch them go. Then she looked up, directly at the external camera, and did something that made the back of my neck go cold. She waved. Not a nervous wave, not a confused wave, a deliberate wave. "Hi. I see you. I know you see me." I sat with that for a long time after the others were upstairs. Then I called Sienna. "I think there's someone else," I said. "Someone who knows things they shouldn't. Not on our side." The silence on Sienna's end told me she'd already wondered about this. "In my experience," she said slowly, "a thing like what happened to me it doesn't happen once. It can't." "How many people had NDEs when the accident happened?" "In the pileup that hit me, there were 3 fatalities and..." She paused. "And I was one of 4 people who were resuscitated." I stared at the camera feed, at the empty alcove where the woman had been standing. "I need you to tell me everything," I said. "About those other 3 people. Whatever you know." 10. Here is the thing about the apocalypse that no zombie movie ever gets right. It's not the creatures outside that keep you up at night. It's the silence of thinking about all the people who've had 3 years of practice living in a world where the rules changed, who have come back knowing exactly which buildings were fortified and which weren't, which families survived and which didn't, who had the good supplies and who went hungry, and exactly how you died last time. That's the thing about someone who came back with that knowledge and chose not to call their friends. They had a reason, and the reason wasn't charity. The blizzard started on day 28. It came in like a dropped curtain. Temperature fell 40 degrees in 6 hours. Snow started fast and kept going. By midnight, the rooftop was buried under 8 inches, and by morning, we couldn't see the buildings across the street. Inside, we were warm. I had the electric blankets deployed, the wood fuel fireplace I'd had Hector install burning steady, the greenhouse maintained at greenhouse temperatures. We were uncomfortable in the specific way that people who are technically fine, but also surrounded by catastrophe, are uncomfortable. But we were alive and warm and fed. The cold was hard on the things outside. They slowed, then stopped, then fell where they stood. The street below became a still life, snow covering everything, turning the horror into something that looked like a painting, like something that could be misread as peaceful. Caspian was at my place more often by then. He didn't explain it, and I didn't ask. He'd started appearing at odd hours, early morning, sometimes late at night, sitting in the kitchen with coffee and looking at the camera feeds while I slept. Once I woke up at 3 a.m. and found him reading one of my zombie analysis notebooks, which was mortifying. "These are color-coded," he said without looking up. "I have a system," I said. "The cross-referencing in the 3rd section is impressive." He turned a page. "You theorized that hive-like behaviors would emerge in high-density zombie populations. That's accurate." I stared at him. "You've been observing them." For longer than you have. He set the notebook down. This isn't my first time in this situation. I knew he was going to say that eventually. I've been waiting for it with the specific patience of someone who has done the math and arrived at a conclusion they haven't yet received confirmation on. How many? I said. He looked at me directly then. He had very steady eyes. The kind of steady that comes from having looked at a lot of hard things and decided to keep looking. This is the 8th time I've been in this scenario, he said. I let that sit for a moment. 8. Yes. And how many times was I stopped, restructured. Was the 42nd floor relevant? He took a long breath. Every time, he said. You've been here every time. Different circumstances, same location. First time, no warning, no preparation. You were here by coincidence. Second time, you had about 4 days' notice from a different source. This time, a pause. This time, someone called you 8 days out, more than I've ever seen you have. I thought about Sienna, about the call, about the sticky note on the mirror. And the other times, I said carefully, what happened? Different things. He looked at the window, at the snow. But the last few, there's been a pattern. Someone comes with knowledge, not our knowledge, different. They know about this location, about the supplies. They come with people. They try to take what's here. He paused. They haven't always failed. I absorbed this. So you're here. You keep being here because you're trying to change the outcome. Because something about this location matters, he said. And because... He stopped. Because what? A pause that went on long enough to become its own kind of answer. Then he said quietly, I keep making the same mistake. Trying to protect the location instead of the people. This time I was trying to do both. I thought about the notebook in his hands, the cross-referencing, the color coding, the very specific way he'd said accurate about my theoretical models, like he was confirming field data. Caspian, I said, what do you do? What did you do before all this? He looked at me. You really want to know? I really want to know. Classified, he said. Then, after a beat, but adjacent to what you'd guess. Government. Adjacent, he said. And for the second time, he almost smiled. 11. The Monroes were okay through the blizzard. Phyllis, who had been, before retirement, a biology professor at DU with a specialty in epidemiology, had started leaving detailed notes about the outbreak's apparent progression in the group Discord, which were more useful than anything I'd found online. She was methodical, careful, and had the quiet authority of someone who had spent 40 years being the smartest person in the room without needing to announce it. Walter had served in Vietnam, which explained the combat shotgun they'd apparently had in their coat closet. He didn't volunteer that information. Harlan inferred it from something Walter said one afternoon about sightlines. And then Harlan very carefully did not make a big deal of it. The Monroes were the steadiest point in the whole building. I found myself, in moments of particular stress, thinking about them drinking tea on floor 17 and finding it weirdly grounding. Harlan remained Harlan, solid, capable, perpetually under-emoting in the way of men who have decided they'll process their feelings after the crisis is over, possibly never. He went on every run, covered every departure, and one afternoon when Emmett had a complete breakdown in the stairwell about his family back in Cleveland, Harlan sat down on the steps next to him and said nothing at all, which was apparently exactly what Emmett needed. He's got a sister, Emmett told me later, and I know the lines are bad and I know it's dangerous. Yeah, I said. You haven't... He paused. Is there someone you're scared for? Outside? I thought about Sienna. Morning and night calls, present and accounted for, 2 cities away. Yeah, I said. One person. She okay? She's okay. Emmett nodded. She sounds smart. She's the reason any of this happened, I said. So, yeah. Daria's husband Marcus turned out to be a software engineer who had never had a dangerous moment in his life. and was handling this whole situation with the deeply strained cheerfulness of someone whose primary coping mechanism is finding the positive angle. To his credit, his positive angle coping mechanism was functional. He taught Zoe card games. He read her stories. He fixed a temperamental generator connection that was keeping one of the freezers from running at full capacity. He asked me if I needed anything, my mom said one morning, coming back from a brief hallway exchange she shouldn't technically have had. He offered to fix the kitchen faucet. "Mom, we're in an apocalypse." "The faucet has been dripping," she said. "It's annoying." "It's also fine." "I know it's fine. I'm just saying Marcus offered." Day 35. The woman came back. She came at night, during the blizzard's brief taper. I'd been watching the exterior cameras because I couldn't sleep, because I never slept well anymore, running on coffee and the particular vigilance of someone who has accepted that inattention is fatal. And I caught her at the east service entrance. She had 3 people with her this time, better equipped. She was using a card reader on the service entrance. It didn't work because I'd changed the locks, but she was trying systematically, which told me she'd done this before, which told me she knew which building this was specifically. I was very still for a long moment. Then I called Caspian. He answered on the first ring, which told me he'd been awake too. "East entrance," I said. "I see it," he said. He could see my camera feed on his phone. I'd shared the access. 4 people. She knows about the building. Yes. A pause. Beck. He said my name carefully, like he was picking something up that required a certain grip. "I told you I made a mistake before. Protecting the location instead of the people. I remember. This time, I want to do something different." Another pause. "I want you to trust me with the external camera controls for 45 minutes. I thought about this. I thought about everything I knew about Caspian roads, which was still not everything there was to know, but was, I had decided, enough. What are you going to do?" I said. "Make sure this building is not interesting to come back to," he said. "For anyone with that kind of information." I thought about the woman who'd waved at the camera, who'd known where I was, what I had, what I'd prepared. 45 minutes, I said, and transferred the controls. I watched the feeds. My dad sat down next to me without saying anything, and we both watched. By the time Caspian came back upstairs, the East Service entrance situation had resolved. The woman and her associates would not be returning. The building exterior looked the same as it always had, covered in snow, quiet, unremarkable. 40 stories up in the penthouse, my mom was asleep on the couch with Biscuit curled beside her, keeping her warm. "Thank you," I said when Caspian came through the door. He sat down in the kitchen chair that had become his chair over the past few weeks. "There's something I should tell you," he said, "about the woman. About why she knew this place." He wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. "In previous iterations, you and I have had variations of this conversation, different outcomes. You've asked me questions I either didn't answer or answered wrong." He looked at me steadily. "This time, I want to answer them right." "Okay," I said. "Then tell me something true." He was quiet for a moment, long enough that the radiator ticked in the wall and Biscuit made a small dream noise from the couch. "I've been in this situation 8 times, he said. "Each time is different. Each time I try to change what went wrong before. This time," he paused. "This time someone warned you early. Someone you trusted gave you 8 days when I've never seen you have more than 4. He met my eyes. "Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how many times I've watched this building fall before week 3? I thought about all the things I'd prepped, all the ways I'd thought through this and planned and calculated and lost sleep over. The logistics mattered, he said, but more than that, the fact that you used those 8 days to build community, not just a fortress. Phyllis Monroe has information about the pathogen that's going to matter later. Harlan's combat experience has kept this building safe 3 times over. Emmett, and here, unexpectedly, he almost smiled again. Emmett Voss is the reason the Okafor kid still laughs. I stared at him. You built something that could hold, he said. That's new. That's different from every other time I've been here. 12. I need to tell you about the hardest part, because this is the thing zombie content always skips. The middle. The first few weeks of an apocalypse have narrative momentum, the initial chaos, the scrambling, the establishing of safety. The last weeks have their own energy, the survivor's relief, the bittersweet return of hope. But the middle is just endurance. 40 days that feel like a year. The same faces, the same routines, the same four walls. It's boredom and grief and the very specific psychological pressure of knowing you're not safe even when you're safe. Because safety is circumstantial and temporary and requires constant maintenance. Emmett ran a movie night on his laptop once a week, projecting from a portable projector onto a blank wall of the common stairwell landing, everyone huddled in the weird intimacy of shared survival. We watched comedies mostly. Zoe fell asleep during every one, and Marcus carried her back. My mom planted herbs in the greenhouse and would not stop being delighted by them. Basil, she said one morning, holding up a pot. Actual basil. Beck, we have basil. Great, I said. Do you know what I can do with basil? Many things, I'm sure. So many things, she said, with an intensity that I found both comforting and slightly alarming. My dad took over the water system management, which he did with military precision and very little drama. He also, over the weeks, quietly became the building's general infrastructure person, fixing small failures, rotating supplies, tracking consumption rates on a handwritten chart that became the de facto management document for the whole operation. He didn't say much about any of it. He just did it. I think about that a lot. About the way he just showed up to a situation and started doing what needed to be done, without needing credit, without narrating his own heroism, without any of the performance that I see in disaster movies and always find false. My dad was just a man who knew how to assess a problem and address it. In the context of the end of the world, that turned out to be irreplaceable. The zombies outside, during the deep freeze, were still. The blizzard subsided after 2 weeks, temperatures settling into a brutal but survivable -15. The things in the streets were frozen where they'd stopped, encased in snow, grotesque sculptures. Occasionally, one would break free. It took longer than it should have, longer than science would predict, and shamble in circles before refreezing. They were not gone. They were waiting. Harlan observed them through binoculars for hours some days, making notes in a small pad. They're slower in the cold, he said once. But they don't die from it the way regular tissue should. Enhanced biological resilience, Phyllis Monroe said over comms. She'd been collaborating with Harlan on the observation notes. Whatever the pathogen is doing to the nervous system, it's also affecting metabolic regulation. They don't thermoregulate normally. They're effectively cold-blooded. Like reptiles, Emmett said. In some respects, though the aggression profile is more mammalian. She paused. It's fascinating from a scientific perspective, terrible from a survival perspective. Can we weaponize the cold somehow? Emmett asked. We already are, I said, by staying inside. 6 weeks in, Sienna's calls started going to voicemail. First morning call, voicemail. I waited. Evening call, picked up, but she sounded wrong. Strained and flat in the specific way of someone who has gotten bad news and hasn't processed it yet. Tell me, I said. Power went out here for 3 days, she said. It came back. But some of my neighbors, she stopped. I was watching my building's entrance on a video doorbell and some of my neighbors got desperate. Some of them didn't make it back from going out to look for things. Are you safe? Yes. A pause. Beck, I keep thinking, if I hadn't come back, if I hadn't called you, what would you be doing right now? I thought about it honestly. Probably in my old apartment, I said. Probably rationing the freeze-dried backpacking food. Probably alone. A beat. Probably fine for a while. Then not. You would have survived, she said. You were always going to try. Maybe, but this... I looked around at the apartment, the greenhouse visible through the glass door. The camera feeds on the monitor, the voices on Discord filtering in from people who were all still alive because of a network of decisions that started with a single call. "This is better than trying," I said. "This is actually working." She was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, "How many days has it been?" 47. "How many more, do you think?" "Sienna, I don't know. But the grid is still partially up, which means there are people keeping it running. The National Guard helicopters are coming every 2 weeks with drops. The city hasn't gone completely dark." I paused. The world hasn't ended. It's just temporarily terrible. She laughed a little. "Temporarily terrible." "That's my pitch," I said. "We're in the trough of temporarily terrible, and eventually there's going to be an other side of it." "How do you know?" "Because I have 45 days of food, and a greenhouse, and chickens, and a guy downstairs who has been through this 8 times, and he's still here." I paused. "He says this time is different, that we built something that can hold." "Do you believe him?" I looked at my camera feeds, at the still, snow-covered streets. At the monitor where Phyllis Monroe's epidemiology notes lived in a shared document, mapping the pathogen's behavior in careful scientific language. At the Discord channel, where Emmett had just posted a meme about being on day 47 of fun employment, but make it apocalypse, and 3 people had already reacted with the crying, laughing emoji. "Yeah," I said, "I do." 14-day 61. The power came back. Not fully, not everywhere. But in our sector of the city, the lights flickered on in the late afternoon and stayed on. Unreliable, cycling, but present. I stood at the window and watched the streetlights come on below and felt something unclench in my chest that I hadn't realized was clenched. "Told you," my dad said from behind me. "Don't," I said, but I was smiling. He put a hand on my shoulder, just for a moment. Then he went back to the kitchen to help my mom with dinner. The Discord exploded. MVOS 2022. "Oh my God, the lights!" H-Cruise fit. Confirmed. Elevator is functional. Status check all floors. Monroe W and P. We're all right up here. Walter made a small exclamation. I've never heard him make an exclamation before. Daria O. Zoe is currently doing a victory dance. I have video. Daria O. I watched the video of Zoe Okafor doing a victory dance in her living room in winter pajamas, and it was the most purely good thing I had seen in 2 months. Then, Caspian_R came online for the first time in 10 days. Caspian_R. Status, functional. Reconnaissance suggests perimeter threat reduction in current conditions. Recommend cautious optimism. Emmett immediately replied, "Cautious optimism is the most Caspian thing I've ever read." From the floor below me, I heard what I was fairly sure was Caspian laughing. 15-day 78. A text alert from FEMA buzzed through on a restored cell signal. Partial connectivity, spotty, but enough. Denver Metro. Emergency operations resuming in several districts. Temperatures returning to normal range. Report to designated community centers for assistance if safe to travel. Repeat. Report to designated community centers. I read it twice. Then I called Sienna. She picked up immediately. "Did you get it?" "Yeah," I said. A pause. Then, "Beck, it's actually going to end." "It was always going to end," I said. "The question was whether we'd make it." "Did we?" I looked out the window. The snow had begun to retreat. Actual sunlight, the real kind, not the gray winter daylight we'd been surviving on, cut through for the first time in weeks. The street below was still. Some of the things out there had not survived the cold. Others had, and they were slow, disoriented, beginning to move again in the cautious way of things coming out of dormancy. But they were fewer. And in the distance, I could see what looked like military vehicles rolling slowly through an intersection. "Yeah," I said. "We did." Another long pause. Then Sienna said something she must have been holding for months. "I'm sorry I didn't call you earlier. When I first came back, I was scared of what you'd think. I waited almost a week before I called. Sienna, I said, you called me with 8 days. 8 days is an eternity. 8 days is everything. I paused. Whatever you lived through in that other version, I don't know exactly what happened, but you came back and you called the right person and you helped me help a lot of people. That's not something to be sorry for. That's the whole thing. I heard her cry a little. Not the way she'd cried at the beginning, not the scared, exhausted cry of someone in free fall. The other kind, the release kind. Meet me when it's safe, she said. Come to Colorado Springs, or I'll come to Denver, I don't care which. I want to... She laughed a little through the tears. I want to show you where I set up. I want you to see that your spreadsheet actually worked. My spreadsheet always works, I said. Your color-coded spreadsheet, she said. Nerd. Surviving nerd, I said. Important distinction. The first time Caspian and I talked, without either of us having an agenda, it was in the rooftop atrium, 3 days after the FEMA alert, amid my mom's herb garden and a half-dozen chickens who had no understanding that any of this had happened and were simply living their best chicken lives. He sat on the edge of a planting bed, and I sat across from him on a bucket. And for a while, we just existed up there in the first genuinely warm afternoon we'd had in months. You know the question I want to ask, I said. Yes, he said. So. He was quiet for a moment. Then, the reason I kept coming back to this specific timeline, this specific building, isn't just the strategic value. No? No. He looked at the chickens. First time I was in this situation, I was here alone. I did what I thought was the right thing. Held position, reported data, kept the location secure. I did that 3 times. And 3 times I survived, but the building didn't. People died. A pause. 4th time, I tried to find allies early. 5th time, I had better intel. 6th time, He stopped. What happened the 6th time? 6th time, he said slowly. Someone called me from a different floor. Week 1. Said they'd been watching the cameras and they'd seen something I needed to know about. They were right. Another pause, longer. We got much further that time. I looked at him. Who called you? He met my eyes. You, he said. You called me. I sat with that for a while. A chicken walked between us, unimpressed by existential significance. And this time, I said, this time I came to you first, he said, because I know how you think. Because you call when it matters, and I didn't want to wait for the call. A pause. Because 8 previous lifetimes of watching someone try to survive alone eventually teaches you that the trying alone is what gets you. You could have just introduced yourself, I said. I know, He looked faintly embarrassed, which was the most human I'd seen him look. I'm not good at normal social interaction. Caspian, I said. My opener for my high school talent show was a 12-minute presentation on optimal zombie outbreak survival routes in a mountain west city. I am the last person to judge you for social irregularity. This time he actually smiled, a real one, not almost. It changed his whole face. We're going to be okay, I said. The people in this building. We're going to get out of this. Yes, he said. I think so. He paused. This time, I think so. 16. Day 91. The temperature had stabilized at a range where cautious outdoor movement was possible with appropriate precautions. The National Guard and FEMA had established a corridor through our district. The things on the streets were reduced. Not gone, not safe, but reduced and slower. And the military had protocols for clearing them. We had a group meeting. All of us, physically present in the 40th floor common space, for the first time. The Monroes came up together, Walter with his cane and Phyllis with her notes, both of them looking exactly as steady as I'd imagined from their Discord presence. Harlan came with a coffee he'd somehow made taste decent despite everything. Emmett came bouncing with the barely contained energy of a man who had been social distancing for 3 months and was finally in a room with humans again. Daria and Marcus came with Zoe, who immediately found Biscuit and declared him her best friend. Caspian came last, as was apparently his way. He stood near the door with his coffee until Emmett physically pulled him further into the room, which he allowed, with the resigned expression of someone who has decided this is fine. My dad made a speech. It was a short speech because he's my dad, and men like him don't speechify. He said, "Everyone in this room did something hard and kept doing it. That means something." He looked around. "That means a lot." Then my mom cried a little, and then Zoe decided to cry too in solidarity. And then Emmett absolutely started tearing up and immediately covered it by pretending to cough, which fooled no one. Phyllis Monroe put her hand over her mouth and looked at the ceiling. Walter put his arm around her. Harlan Cruz stared at a middle distance and did not cry, but his jaw worked in a way that said plenty. I didn't cry. I'm not a crier. But something in me did what I imagine crying would feel like if I were a different person. A loosening of something that had been braced for so long, the bracing had stopped feeling like effort and just felt like how I was. I looked at Caspian. He was looking back at me. He gave me a single nod, the kind that says, "We did it," without making it a production. I nodded back. We left the Meridian in stages. The Okafor family went first. Marcus had heard from his sister in Boulder, who was alive, who had supplies, who needed them. They packed what they could carry, took what they needed, and we hugged them goodbye on the 40th floor, while Zoe clung to Biscuit and made him promise to remember her. He will, I told her. He doesn't forget a friend. Will I see him again? Yeah, I said. I think so. Daria hugged me so hard it knocked the wind out of me a little. Thank you, she said. I didn't know what to say to that. You kept your daughter laughing through 2 months of apocalypse, I said. Thank you. The Monroes stayed another week until the corridor to their son's house in Fort Collins was confirmed safe. They left behind Phyllis's epidemiology notes, 30 pages, detailed, organized, with recommendations, which she formally transferred to Caspian with the instruction to get them to the right people. I know people, he said. I suspect you do, she said. Emmett went home to try to reach Cleveland. He and I exchanged numbers and had a conversation about staying in touch that we both meant. You know what's weird, he said, right before he left? I didn't do anything, like strategically. I didn't know anything useful. I just talked. I kept talking. Emmett, I said, do you know how many times in 2 months something got quietly better because you were there? He looked uncertain. Zoe Okafor laughs because of you. Walter Monroe made his first joke in week 3 because you made a terrible pun and he couldn't help himself. Harlan talks more now than he did before any of this started. I looked at him. You were not a minor contribution. You were infrastructure. He absorbed this, then, that's the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. And it involves the word infrastructure. I contain multitudes. He laughed. For the last time in our shared hallway, he laughed. Then he picked up his bag and took the elevator down and walked out into a city that was beginning, slowly, to breathe again. 17. My parents stayed. I hadn't asked them to. I'd told them, once the danger had significantly reduced, that they could go back to their house, the place they'd lived for 20 years, the house I grew up in, which had survived the 2 months with minor storm damage and a very confused mail pile. My dad looked at me for a long time when I said this. Then he said, "Why would we leave?" "Because it's over," I said. "Because you can." "Your mother has basil," he said. "You have a ridiculous garden in the sky. We're comfortable." He paused. "And you're here." I looked at him. Dad. Beck. He said it the way he says things when the matter is decided. We'll go back eventually, but not yet. A pause. You spent 8 days building something to keep us safe. Give us a little while to enjoy it. I had nothing to say to that. So I said nothing. He patted my shoulder. Also, your mother found a box of yarn in the supply closet. She wants to teach you to knit. Absolutely not. She's very excited about it. Tell her I have strong opinions about that. I'll tell her. She'll ignore them. He was right. She did. Caspian left on a Tuesday morning, 3 months and 4 days after the outbreak began. He didn't make a production of it. He appeared with a bag at my door and said, "There are people I need to find. And I have information that needs to reach certain places." "The notes," I said. "Phyllis's notes." "Among other things." He paused. "I'll be in touch. I have your number." "You have my camera access," I said. "You've had it for months." "I know." He almost smiled. "I'll keep it, in case." "In case what?" He looked at me steadily, the same steady look he'd had since the first time I'd really seen it. "In case I ever need to find you in a hurry," he said. "In case 8 days isn't enough warning." I held his gaze. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, I hope this was the last time," he said. "And I'm saying, I've hoped that before." I thought about that. About 8 iterations of the worst months of his life. About the fact that he kept coming back, not out of obligation, not out of programming, but out of something more stubborn and harder to name. "If there's a 9th time," I said, "call me on day 1. Don't wait." "Deal," he said. He shook my hand. He was gone. I stood in the hallway of the 40th floor and listened to the elevator descend, and thought about all the things I didn't know about Caspian roads, and might never know, and found that I was okay with that. Some people are like locks, complex mechanisms, hard to read, purposefully resistant. The useful thing is not understanding every pin and tumbler. The useful thing is knowing they'll hold. Epilogue. I called Sienna on the day I finally went back outside. Not the tentative, guarded outdoor movement of the past few weeks. Perimeter checks, secured routes, armed escort when necessary. I mean, actually outside. I walked out the front door of the Meridian with Biscuit on his leash, and we stood on the sidewalk in April sunlight, and I looked at a street that smelled like spring and felt like a city that was, slowly, improbably, beginning to come back. "I'm outside," I told Sienna. "How does it feel?" "Like something I used to take completely for granted," I said. "Like air." "Yeah," she said. "Yeah, that's right." Biscuit put his nose against a fire hydrant and made a series of important discoveries. A pigeon walked past without being afraid of him, which probably meant the pigeon had survived 2 months of apocalypse and developed an elevated threat model. Somewhere down the block, someone was playing music, something old, something I didn't recognize, filtering through a window from 3 floors up. "You should come to Denver," I said, "whenever you're ready. I've still got a rooftop greenhouse and a ridiculous amount of freeze-dried provisions." "And basil," she said. "My mom specifically wants you to know about the basil." She laughed. It was her old laugh, the easy one, from before all of this. Almost. Something had shifted in it, the way things shift when you carry something heavy for long enough that the shape of you changes. But it was still hers, still her. "I'm coming," she said. "Give me a week." "Take 2, I said. "Roads are still spotty." "Back," she said. "Yeah." "You know I did the math, right? In that life. The number of people who were in your building and made it, versus the odds." A pause. "It wasn't luck." I thought about my dad's handwritten chart, my mom's basil, Harlan's quiet, constant competence, Emmett's irreplaceable noise, Phyllis's careful notes, Walter's arm around his wife, Zoe Okafor's victory dance, Caspian's 8 returns, and the things he'd carried between them. "No," I said. "It wasn't luck." Biscuit looked up at me and wagged his tail. I scratched his ears. 8 days, I said. "You gave me 8 days, Sienna." "You built a city in 8 days." "I built a building," I said. "The city took a little longer." To be continued, but hopefully not. A note from the author. I've been asked, in the roundabout way that writers get asked things, at readings, in emails from readers who found their way to this story, What made me want to write a zombie story in 2024? Honestly, it wasn't the zombies. I grew up watching disaster movies with my dad on Friday nights. Outbreak, Contagion, The Stand, World War Z. He'd make popcorn, and we'd sit there and he'd point out, quietly, every time a character made a choice that was going to kill them later. Not with judgment, just as observation. See how they split up? He'd say. That's going to matter. He was always right. The thing he was teaching me, without ever saying it explicitly, was something about paying attention, about thinking ahead, about the difference between reacting to a situation and having thought about it before the situation arrived. I write about apocalypses because I find them clarifying. Survival, real survival, not movie survival, is ultimately about community. Every zombie story that focuses on a lone survivor is, I think, telling the story of someone who survived despite themselves. The harder story, the truer story, is about what happens when you manage to hold a group of people together through something that is specifically designed to pull them apart. The character I was most interested in while writing this was not Beck, for all that he's the narrator. It was his father, the man who shows up, assesses, and starts doing what needs doing without fanfare. Every community has that person. They're rarely the most dramatic character in the room. They're usually the one who's quietly keeping the lights on. I also wrote this because I've been thinking for years about the debt we owe each other when we have information someone else needs. The way Sienna's call to Beck is the hinge of everything. Not her vision, not her survival, but the call. The decision to reach out rather than handle it alone. That choice, in my experience, is harder than it sounds. Vulnerability is hard. Asking for help is hard. Saying, I know something weird is happening and I need you to trust me, is maybe the hardest of all. But it's the most important thing. Whatever you know that someone else needs to know, tell them. 8 days out, or 8 hours, or 8 minutes. Tell them. And if you're the person who gets the call, pick up. The author, Denver, Colorado.